Welcome back to the show. My name's Mark Nixon. Mark Carney's agenda is crumbling before our very eyes. The Liberals are scrambling to keep that illusion going. They can't keep the lid on this bottle. Everything is being exposed in real time. What we're seeing right now is a train derailment. The thing is, this train is going full speed ahead. And there's nothing that's going to stop this thing from going into a full-blown national crisis. And today, we're going to expose it all. Before we begin today, just do me a favor and check and make sure the notification button's on and you're subscribed to the channel. We are competing against the $1.4 billion and newly announced $6 billion bailout for mainstream media. If you want real content by someone that is not completely paid off, welcome to the team. By the way, all those new bills that they have is making sure that people like me, our content is buried at the very bottom of the list. So make sure that if you're not receiving the notifications, which I've actually heard people saying, dude, I'm subscribed and I have notifications, I'm not seeing any of your videos. Go ahead and search for my videos to make sure you don't miss any of my crucial reports. Let's get into this report. We're gonna kick things off in full speed ahead. I'm gonna go right into the meat and potatoes, but stick around to the very end because the Liberals have done a secret little plan, their fallback, foolproof plan that I'm gonna expose. And yes, they are sneaky. And unfortunately, people in this country are so easily paid off. Mark Carney's agenda is crumbling right before our very eyes. The entire world is abandoning this net zero policy, but nope, not the Liberals. They have the most restrictive and horrific regulations and policies. The Liberals literally say that they actually know better than industry leaders. They say that our green decarbonized oil is making us so competitive, when in fact, Canada represents only 1.5% of total global emissions, and our biome, our forest, absorb all of it. Because the 1.5% of total global emissions, they do not reduce the emissions whatsoever with calculating how much the forest takes out of the air. Can you actually believe it, Canada? We only calculate the emission, but what about the subtraction from the forest? But here's the thing, Canadians are starting to wake up and realize it's either the Liberals' net zero policy, which makes absolutely zero sense, or prosperity. Which one is it gonna be? By the way, this fantastic clip has been provided by RMC86 in the video description. I will put a link to this person's account. They've also included some of my clips, but putting them together like this, perfect.
If we want Canada to compete and win in a time-bound global race for capital, we need to act differently starting now.
With a deadline for that commitment of April 1st.
Will we perfectly meet the first? Not necessarily.
There has been a collapse of the global consensus on this issue.
One of the selling factors is that emissions are 25% lower than previous
carbon capture storage project, a project that will make Alberta energy, specifically oil and gas, competitive.
No one, as you say, willing to pay a premium, not even Europe. Even in Europe, surprise, in the middle of an energy crisis.
We've created for making sure that we are not just meeting our climate obligations, but being competitive in a world where carbon competitiveness is increasingly important.
Also don't think it's appropriate for Canada to sacrifice the prosperity of Canadians for something the rest of the world isn't doing anymore.
The clean fuel regulations do not impose a price at the pump.
The world is right now, with Europe talking about suspending their industrial pricing, the Americans not having it at all.
The obvious way for prosperity here is to build the shit out of pipelines, build the shit of our industry, get resources that everyone needs, fucking starting to actually refine the stuff ourselves.
The entire world, except for Canada, is rejecting this net zero nonsense. They're looking and saying the entire world's economy is about to collapse. We're ditching this net zero thing. But in Canada, we have Mr. Net Zero trying to sell us Canadians that our decarbonized oil, which is going to have a premium on top of the world market oil, everyone's going to want to buy it. This is like telling a child that this candy here has 25% less sugar in it, and it costs twice as much. Or you get the full sugar over here and it costs half the price. Which one are you going to decide on the world markets? This is where we're at, Canada. And Canadians are looking at this Liberal Party, including Liberals, and saying, you know what? Just ditch this thing already before it's too late. What we're going to do now is we are going to tear apart Mark Carney's press release when he was pressed about oil and gas companies saying, if you do not move away from this net zero nonsense, we are taking all of our bags of cash and leaving this country. What does Mark Carney have to say?
The CEO of Cenovus Energy this morning made some comments. I'm not sure if you saw them, but he said the national dialogue on further development of the oil sands has been myopically focused on the climate agenda and climate policy, and then investors have left Canada for more competitive jurisdictions. I'd like your thoughts, please.
Well, I start by observing the following, which is that the oil production in Canada, largely driven by the oil sands, is at a record high. It's moved up over the course of the last decade from 3 million barrels per day to over 5 million barrels per day.
Get this. Mark Carney was not responsible for a single drop of those barrel increases from 3 million to 5 million barrels. He wasn't even in the picture for all that increase. What has he done physically to increase those barrels today? He's done nothing. So he could actually stand there and tell us Canadians that we've increased all of these barrels of oil because of him. He has most likely reduced the output. We should be at 10 million barrels per day today instead of 5 million barrels because he was the economic advisor of the Trudeau government for 5 years before he became prime minister. We all know that he was part of the Liberal agenda in order to charge all of this carbon pricing.
That brings great benefits to the country. But
oh, now he acknowledges that oil and gas brings lots of benefit to this country, yet he will not remove all of the barriers in order for us to build like crazy pipelines everywhere. Can you believe it? He admits it's making our country rich, but he's in the way, so we can't develop any more of it.
But it also is a source of our emissions, is one of the biggest sources of our national emissions. And one of the...
Let's fact check that claim. Mark Carney's right. 30% of the total emissions for Canada is from the oil and gas sector. But get this, if we reduce the 30% to 0%, what is 30% of 1.5% of total global emissions? Can you imagine? We got rid of our oil and gas industry. I'm about to blow your mind. The oil and gas industry, which is 30% of the total emissions from Canada, represents 208 million tons of CO2. Now, let's take a look at China. It says right here, coal is by far the largest source of CO2 emissions in China, accounting for roughly 70+% of the total country's fossil fuel and industrial CO2 emissions in recent years. How much emissions is China emitting in coal? 8.55 billion tons of emissions from coal, the 70%. And you are not going to believe this. Natural gas burns 50% less CO2 than coal. Actually, it's a little bit more. If you look at it, the range is 49% to 56%. Guess how much natural gas Canada has? 1.3 trillion cubic feet of natural gas at current Canadian consumption rate, 200 to 300 years worth. I'm a data guy, so let's do some math. 280 megatons of CO2 from our oil and gas industry every single year. China emits 8.55 billion metric tons of CO2 burning coal every year. We now know that if we sell natural gas to China, it's easy to convert a coal burning plant into a natural gas burning energy plant. So if Canada sold our natural gas, which is 50% more efficient, and we just sold all our natural gas, replacing all of the coal that China burns, imagine cutting this in half. That's 4.25 billion metric tons. So instead of attacking our Canadian oil and gas industry, we should be tripling, quadrupling, 10 times, 30 times X our natural gas exports, which would reduce global emissions by 4.2 billion tons. And we're just talking about 285 million tons. Think about 4.25 billion tons per year. Let's go back to Mark Carney.
Great benefits to the country, but it also is a source of our emissions. It's one of the biggest sources of our national emissions. And one of the factors, I'm going to anchor this in the discussion today, or what we're celebrating today, what AirAsia is doing, what Tony Fernandez has helped to lead. When you look at Asia, biggest, fastest growing market, crucial to the future of Quebec, future of Canada, is building those links. What they're looking for, and you see it in the choice of the A220, is not just efficiency, but low emissions. One of the selling factors is that emissions are 25% lower than previous, because they're looking for that efficiency over the long haul. And one of the factors, one of the key selling points for Canadian conventional energy will be that it's low risk. Canada is the lowest risk jurisdiction. Low cost, low marginal cost. We are continuing to work on that. And low carbon. And so getting the emissions down will put us in a position. And I will tell you that from direct conversations with a series of governments across Asia, that's what they're looking for the medium term. That's what the Government of Canada is working with the Government of Alberta in order to produce a comprehensive approach through our MOU. We're making good progress on.
I just showed you the math. So Mark Carney's trying to convince Canadians that instead of selling all our natural gas to Asia, which would reduce China's emissions by 4.25 billion tons, he wants to go after Canadian oil and gas industry to reduce their emissions, which makes our decarbonized oil uncompetitive on the global market. Because the United States and other countries, we're the only country on the planet that's so ambitious in doing this. Instead of just looking at the simple math that I showed you, he's trying to sell us snake oil. Then we have Danielle Smith today, which came out and said if we had elected Pierre Poilievre as Prime Minister of Canada, there would be zero requirement for a carbon pricing system.
We have to take a different approach. Pierre Poilievre did not get elected. If he had gotten elected, we might have had a different approach. We have a Liberal government where their carbon tax objectives are a much higher priority. And so if we're going to try to get to a deal, there's a compromise that we have to make. We just hope that we landed in the right spot.
Did you get all that? Because we have a Liberal-led government, we are getting led off a financial cliff. And Canadians across Canada are waking up. Across the country, it is amazing to witness because Canadians are actually a lot smarter than you give them credit to. Check out this explosive segment.
And Martha Hall Finley says, look, we've got to get past this insistence on carbon capture because carbon capture means we're going to be environmentally sound and people will pay more for our energy. I don't think so.
No,
and
there's no such thing as a green premium.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a green premium.
What drove you to say that?
Well, having worked on the Pathways CCUS project from its inception, this was a very hard thing for me to conclude, but the world has changed. And if you look, two things. One, we as a country realize we have to start spending billions of dollars on the kind of infrastructure, our ports, our linear infrastructure, pipelines, national security. That means icebreakers in James Bay,
defense,
like
serious
in the
defense.
Arctic. So we have very big expenditures coming up in this country that we should be spending on. At the same time, that particular CCUS project, the Pathways project, the first phase alone would be well over $20 billion and, importantly, contribute virtually nothing to global climate change. And this is a remaining problem in Canada because people responded to that op-ed, lots of support. But then a few said, well, we need the social license because Canada has to meet its Paris Agreement targets. I got to tell you, pull your head out of the sand. This is, we are now
Nobody
one
cares
of the
about the Paris
only,
Agreement.
and I take no pleasure in that.
Yeah, no, and
climate
it's tough,
change is
sure.
a problem,
Yeah.
but I also don't think it's
100%.
appropriate for Canada to sacrifice, the prosperity of Canadians for something the rest of the world isn't doing anymore, right?
Yeah.
For us to be so Boy Scoutish to think that we still need to meet our Paris Agreement targets when no one else will, and spend billions of dollars that is not revenue generating at the same time makes absolutely no sense. And if somebody says, well, we need the social license, my answer is we need the leadership to go back to the people who are still saying that and say, the world has changed. This is based on a false arrogance of Canada's role in the world and our contribution to climate. Let's have a really serious discussion about what Canada needs right now. So it is not against CCUS. We could actually enhance our technology, ultimately sell it. It's what does Canada strategically need to focus on right now?
As Keith Wilson says here, the Pacific Pipeline MOU is officially over. Yeah, the oil CEOs have already made it very clear they will not and cannot expand production based on the carbon taxes, the Pathway project, because the costs and all the other net zero burdens that threatens our economy. If there's no increase in production, then there's no shippers commitment. No shippers commitment means no pipeline. Danielle Smith and Mark Carney, they met up. They should straight up come out and say that the MOU is over. The US and Asia and other customers want Alberta oil. They are not prepared to pay a premium for net zero fantasies, and they need it now. And Canada's jobs market cannot wait one more day for us to pivot to common sense. Here's our jobs report that was released today. The first 4 months of this year, we have lost a total of 111,300 full-time jobs in Canada. Now let's talk about Erin O'Toole. This is the Liberal government's fall guy. That's right. They created a 24-member committee to deal with negotiations with Donald Trump. After not talking to Donald Trump for 5 straight months, then media and everybody's like, where's our deal with the US? Oh, shoot. We're going to create this 24-member committee because they're not treating the US negotiations with urgency. when we're losing all of these jobs across the country, they don't care about the US deal. It's quite evident because without Orange Man Bad, the Liberals cannot run on their track record for the last decade. They need Orange Man Bad to be at fear level 1000 so that everybody's like, yeah, elbows up. But here's the thing about this guy is he failed as the conservative leader. That's right. They rejected him because he wanted to bring the party to the center. We don't want the party to the center. So the conservatives rejected him. Everybody's got a price in life. He looked at Mark Carney and saw that he was going to get this lucrative job to negotiate with Donald Trump and said, this is going to look real nice on my resume. But he failed to think about why Mark Carney would invite him onto that role. Because what will happen when US-Canada trade explodes and there's zero deal, Mark Carney and the Liberals can say that they had a conservative on the team and it's the conservatives' fault that we have no trade deal because of Team Canada failed. See, this guy doesn't care about Canada because as soon as things get ugly between Donald Trump and the Liberals, they got this guy as the fall guy. Don't worry, guys. I'm not going to leave you hanging. It's Friday, so we need some good news to look forward to. How are we going to take back control of this country and win again? There's most likely going to be 2 by-elections this summer. North Vancouver Capilano MP Jonathan Wilkinson has announced he's stepping down, so we know for sure there's one. And Nate Erskine-Smith here, he's also not going to be running in the next election, but as soon as Doug Ford calls a by-election, he's going to resign and he's going to run in the provincial election in Ontario. This is most likely going to happen this summer. So 2 by-elections. In the North Vancouver riding, Wilkinson won 60% of the vote. But it's because people in that riding like Wilkinson. Now that he's going to step down, look, the Conservatives were winning. They were winning. And in this riding, it has gone 50-50. So if the Conservatives actually put a top candidate and actually throw money in this riding, the Conservatives could definitely win this riding. And I will be helping out in this riding when they make that announcement because we need to take back control of this country. Here's Nate's riding where he won 65% in last election, but don't worry, let me show you something else. Check out this result. Matthew here, which is NDP, he won by 41% of the vote back in 2011. In 2008, it was 41% for the Liberals. In 2006, Maria won with 40%, but look how close the NDP was, 35% of the vote. And in 2004, it was 47% for Maria again. And look, Peter here, the NDP was 32%. What I'm trying to say is it's very close for the NDP. And they have a new leader, Avi Lewis, and he's quite popular with the progressives. If Avi Lewis went into here and ran against who? What Liberal are they going to pick? But he has a good shot at winning that riding. And maybe the Conservatives don't even run a candidate in the Ontario riding so that those people will literally vote for the NDP. But let's just put it this way. If the Liberals do not win both of those ridings, they lose their majority government. And in the fall, what's going to happen is a non-confidence vote, and this government is going to fall. And when they do, we are going to win again. The Conservatives are going to take back control of this country. This is not a far-off analysis. This is the truth. There is a path to victory here. Hopefully everybody has a wonderful weekend. I look forward to delivering more of these reports. I'll see you on the next report.